The German shepherd's teeth were 2 inches from the security guard's throat when the gavel slammed down. "Sold!" The crack of wood on wood echoed through the white pavilion like a gunshot. Every head in the crowd turned toward the ring, where the massive dog stood frozen mid-lunge, muscles coiled tight beneath a coat of charred black and deep rust. His jaws were open, fangs exposed, but he hadn't bitten. Not yet. The guard stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet, face drained of color. The dog didn't chase. He simply lowered himself back onto the sand, amber eyes tracking the man's retreat with the cold calculation of a predator who had decided, for now, to let his prey live. "Ragnar," that's what the placard said. Lot 42, 3 years old, Belgian Malinois German Shepherd mix, tactical washout. The red stamp across his file read, "Dangerous, solitary confinement recommended." The air inside the pavilion smelled wrong. Sawdust and leather, yes, but underneath it all was the sharp, metallic tang of fear and the cloying sweetness of expensive perfume. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting golden light over rows of folding chairs filled with men in tailored suits and women dripping in diamonds. This was the annual K9 tactical auction in upstate New York, where millionaires and private security firms came to buy weapons that walked on 4 legs. At the back of the pavilion, pressed against the canvas wall like he was trying to disappear into it, stood Kieran Deshawn Wallace. His suit didn't fit. The shoulders were too tight, the pants a half-inch too short, and the fabric had that stiff, off-the-rack shine that screamed clearance sale. His shoes were scuffed at the toes, his hands were calloused and scarred from years of carpentry work. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. A woman in front of him leaned toward her companion, her pearl earrings swinging, as she whispered loud enough for half the row to hear. "That's the one that attacked a handler during the certification test. Tore right through a Kevlar sleeve. They should have put him down." Her companion, a man with silver hair and a Rolex that caught the light, nodded slowly. "Too aggressive. No discipline. That's what happens when you try to train an animal that's already broken." Kieran's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His right hand slipped into his pocket, fingers brushing against the folded photograph he carried everywhere. Elodie, 7 years old, dark braids, eyes that used to shine with laughter, but hadn't since the night 2 years ago, when everything shattered. Welcome to the channel. Before we dive into Kieran's journey, I want to welcome all the fathers, the fighters, and the believers joining us today. Here, we tell stories about the battles we fight in the shadows and the bonds that save us. If you believe that everyone deserves a second chance, whether it's a man or a dog, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You are part of the family now. Let's get into the story. The auctioneer, a rail-thin man with a handlebar mustache and a voice like gravel grinding against glass, stepped back into the ring. He eyed Ragnar the way someone might look at a loaded gun lying on a table. Carefully, with respect born from understanding exactly how much damage it could do. "Ladies and gentlemen," the auctioneer said, adjusting his microphone. "As you just witnessed, Lot 42 is not your typical family pet. This animal has been deemed unsuitable for law enforcement deployment due to excessive aggression and inability to follow handler commands under stress conditions." Ragnar sat in the center of the ring, utterly still. His ears were forward, alert. His breathing was controlled, almost meditative. He wasn't pacing like the other dogs had. He wasn't barking or whining or showing any of the nervous energy that had characterized the previous lots. He was simply watching, studying. His gaze swept across the crowd, pausing on faces, reading body language with an intelligence that made Kieran's skin prickle. For just a moment, those amber eyes locked onto Kieran's. The world narrowed, the noise of the crowd faded into a dull hum. Kieran felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he couldn't name. The dog's stare wasn't hostile. It wasn't fearful. It was searching, like he was looking for something specific in Kieran's face and wasn't sure if he'd found it yet. Then Ragnar blinked slowly and turned his attention back to the auctioneer. "Opening bid," the auctioneer announced, his voice cutting through Kieran's thoughts, "is $500. Silence. Not a single paddle moved. The woman with the pearls actually laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "You'd have to pay me to take that liability," she muttered. The auctioneer's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the gavel. "Come now, folks. This is a fully trained protection animal. Excellent bloodlines, championship pedigree. Someone here must see the value." More silence. Kieran could feel the collective decision forming in the room. Nobody wanted the risk. Nobody wanted to be the person who brought home the dog that might turn on them in the middle of the night. From somewhere near the front row, a voice rang out, smooth and sharp as broken glass. "Save your breath, Frank. That animal is defective merchandise. You might as well shoot it and sell the pelt." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Kieran's hands curled into fists. He knew that voice. Sterling Vance, real estate developer. The man who'd bought up half the low-income housing in Kieran's neighborhood and turned it into luxury condos with names like The Apex and Elevation Towers. The man whose company logo, a silver V stamped on every eviction notice, had become synonymous with displacement. Vance was leaning back in his seat, legs crossed, arms draped over the chairs on either side of him, like he owned the entire row. Probably did. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than Kieran's truck and his cologne, something heavy and expensive with notes of cedar and tobacco, drifted all the way to the back of the pavilion. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Mr. Vance, with all due respect, this animal represents a significant investment. The training alone—" "Training?" Vance interrupted, his smile widening. "Frank, I sponsored half that training program. I know exactly what this dog is worth. 0. He failed every live scenario test, bit 3 different handlers, refused commands. You want to know the real reason he washed out?" Vance paused for effecties, his eyes scanning the crowd. "Because he's uncontrollable. A ticking time bomb. The kennel master told me personally, if they can't sell him today, they're putting him down tomorrow." Kieran's heart hammered against his ribs. Tomorrow. The word echoed in his skull. He looked at Ragnar again. The dog hadn't reacted to Vance's voice, hadn't growled or shown any sign of recognition. But something in the set of his shoulders had changed. The muscles along his spine were taut, vibrating with a tension that didn't match his outwardly calm demeanor. The auctioneer sighed, the sound crackling through the microphone. "All right, folks, last call. Do I hear 500? Kieran's hand moved before his brain could stop it. The paddle rose into the air, the number 73 facing forward. Every eye in the pavilion swiveled toward him. The auctioneer blinked in surprise. "We have 500 from the gentleman in the back," Do I hear 6? 600! Someone called out, a bored-sounding man in the third row, who clearly just wanted to see where this would go. Kieran's throat was dry. 700. The man in the third row shrugged and sat back. The auctioneer's gaze swept the room. 700 going once, twice. He raised the gavel. 1,000. The voice came from Vance. He hadn't moved, hadn't even turned around, but his tone carried the weight of a man who was used to getting exactly what he wanted. Kieran's stomach dropped. $1,000. That was the money he'd saved for a new work truck. The transmission on his current one was failing, grinding metal on metal every time he shifted into third gear. Without reliable transportation, he couldn't take jobs outside the city, couldn't provide for Elodie. But he thought about the locks on his doors, the alarm system that chirped every time a window opened, the baseball bat he kept under his bed. All the things that were supposed to make Elodie feel safe, but didn't. She still woke up screaming 3-4 times a week, still flinched when someone knocked on the door, still hadn't spoken a single word since the night her mother died. He needed more than locks and alarms. He needed something that didn't sleep, something that couldn't be fooled or bribed or threatened, something that would stand between his daughter and the world, no matter what. Kieran raised his paddle. 1,200. Vance finally turned around. His expression was one of amused confusion, like he'd just noticed an ant trying to carry a crumb 10 times its size. 1,500, he said flatly. 2,000, Kieran shot back. The crowd murmured. The woman with the pearls clutched her purse like she was watching a car accident unfold in slow motion. Vance stood up, smoothing the front of his suit. He walked down the aisle toward Kieran with the casual confidence of a man who'd never lost anything that mattered. Up close, he was shorter than he looked on the billboards, but he carried himself tall. His eyes were pale blue, the color of ice over deep water. He stopped 3 feet from Kieran and smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You're Kieran Wallace, aren't you? I recognize you from the tenant registry. 1247 Oakmont Street." Kieran's blood turned cold. "What's that got to do with anything?" "Just making sure I have the right person," Vance said pleasantly. "You're the one with the little girl. Elodie, right? Sweet kid. Shame about your wife. Real tragedy." He tilted his head, the smile never faltering. "You should save your money, Kieran. You're going to need it. That house of yours. The property tax lien was sold to my company last month. Didn't you get the notice?" The words hit like a fist to the gut. Kieran had gotten notices, piles of them. Letters with red stamps and bold print that he'd shoved into a drawer, because looking at them made his chest tighten until he couldn't breathe. Vance leaned in closer, his cologne overwhelming. "That neighborhood's getting a facelift. New development breaking ground in 6 months. Your little house, it's a tear down. But hey, don't let me stop you from wasting your money on a defective dog. You two deserve each other." He turned and walked back to his seat, waving a dismissive hand at the auctioneer. "He can have it! I'm out!" The auctioneer looked uncertain. "Mr. Wallace, do you confirm your bid of $2,000? Kieran's vision was blurry at the edges. His hands were shaking, but he nodded. "Sold!" The gavel came down hard. Lot 42 to bidder number 73. The crowd lost interest immediately, conversations resuming as handlers began preparing the next dog. Kieran made his way down the aisle, on legs that felt disconnected from his body. He reached the ring just as the gate opened. Ragnar stood, shaking sand from his coat. He was even bigger up close, easily 90 pounds of pure muscle. Scars crisscrossed his muzzle and shoulders, pale lines against dark fur. One ear had a notch missing from the tip. He looked like he'd been through a war. The handler, a young guy with nervous eyes and a bandage on his forearm, shoved the leash toward Kieran. "He's your problem now. Good luck." He practically ran back toward the safety of the pavilion's side entrance. Kieran stood there, leash in hand, staring at the dog who'd just cost him everything he had left. Ragnar stared back, head slightly tilted, eyes unreadable. Slowly, carefully, Kieran extended his other hand, palm down, fingers loose. He'd read once that you should never reach over a dog's head. Let them come to you. Ragnar's nostrils flared. He took one step forward, then another. His nose touched Kieran's knuckles, cold and wet. He inhaled deeply, processing scents Kieran couldn't begin to imagine. Sweat, sawdust, the cheap detergent he used to wash his clothes, maybe deeper than that. Fear, desperation, grief. Then, without warning, Ragnar pressed the full weight of his head against Kieran's thigh and leaned into him. It wasn't aggression. It was surrender. A silent acknowledgement that they were both broken things the world had thrown away. And maybe, just maybe, that meant they belonged together. Kieran's throat tightened. He rested his hand on the dog's head, fingers sinking into thick fur. "We're going to be all right," he whispered, though he had no idea if it was true. They walked together toward the parking lot, past rows of expensive cars and trailers with custom kennel setups. Kieran's truck was at the far edge, a rusted Ford with a cracked windshield and a tailgate held shut with bungee cords. He lowered the gate, revealing a nest of old blankets he'd laid out that morning. Ragnar approached the truck and stopped. His ears flattened. A low rumble started deep in his chest, barely audible, but felt through the ground. "Hey, it's okay," Kieran said softly. "It's just a truck. Come on, boy." But Ragnar wasn't looking at the truck. He was looking past it, toward the far side of the parking lot, where a black SUV with tinted windows sat idling. The dog's hackles rose, a ridge of fur standing straight along his spine. The rumble became a growl, vibrating through the air like the warning hum of a hornet's nest. Kieran followed his gaze. He couldn't see through the dark windows, but he didn't need to. He recognized the silver V emblem on the front grille. Inside the SUV, barely visible through a crack in the driver's side window, was the glow of a lit cigar. Ragnar's growl deepened, his body coiling tight, every muscle locked and ready. He wasn't just warning. He was remembering something. And whatever that memory was, it terrified him more than anything Kieran had seen all day. What was Ragnar trying to tell Kieran about the man in that SUV? The envelope felt like it weighed 10 pounds. Kieran sat in the auction office, a cramped room that smelled like burnt coffee and old paper, sliding the stack of cash across the desk. $2,000. 20 crisp $100 bills he'd withdrawn that morning from 3 different ATMs because his account wouldn't let him take it all at once. The teller at the last bank had looked at him with pity, like she could see exactly how close to the edge he was living. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses on a beaded chain, counted the bills twice, her lips moving silently. She stamped a receipt, slid it across the desk, and then pulled out a manila folder held together. with a rubber band so old it cracked when she removed it. "Ownership papers, medical records, and training documentation," she said in a monotone voice, clearly having said this exact sentence 100 times before. "You'll need to register him with the county within 30 days if you want to keep him legal. There's also a waiver you need to sign." She pushed a form toward him. Kieran scanned it quickly, but his eyes kept snagging on certain phrases. "High-risk animal. Previous incidents of aggression. Owner assumes all liability for injury or death caused by the animal." He signed it anyway. What choice did he have? The clerk pulled the form back, barely glancing at his signature. "The dog's in holding pen 7. Back entrance, turn left. Can't miss it. Good luck." The way she said it made it sound like he'd need it. Kieran grabbed the folder and headed out, his footsteps echoing on the linoleum. The hallway leading to the holding area was narrow and fluorescent lit, the kind of light that made everything look vaguely sick. Metal doors lined both sides, each with a small window reinforced with wire mesh. Pen 7 was at the end. Through the window, Kieran could see Ragnar lying in the corner of a concrete cell, barely large enough for him to turn around. A metal bowl of water sat untouched near the door. The dog's eyes were open, staring at nothing. Kieran unlocked the door. The metallic click echoed through the small space. Ragnar's head lifted. He didn't move otherwise, just watched as Kieran stepped inside and crouched down, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "Hey, boy," Kieran said quietly. "We're getting out of here." For a long moment, Ragnar didn't react. Then, with a heaviness that seemed to cost him effort, he rose to his feet and walked over. He sat directly in front of Kieran, close enough that Kieran could feel the heat radiating from his body. Kieran clipped the leash onto the collar, a thick leather band studded with metal reinforcements. Then he stood and opened the door wider. "Come on, let's go home." They walked through the hallway together, Ragnar's nails clicking against the floor in a steady rhythm. When they reached the back exit, Kieran pushed the door open and stepped into the late afternoon sun. The parking lot was mostly empty now. Most of the buyers had already left with their new acquisitions, loaded into climate-controlled trailers and luxury vehicles. Kieran's truck sat alone near the tree line, looking even more pathetic in the daylight. He led Ragnar to the passenger side and opened the door. The dog stopped at the threshold, his body going rigid. "Come on," Kieran urged, patting the seat. "It's okay." But Ragnar wasn't looking at the truck. His attention was locked on something behind them. Kieran turned. Sterling Vance was leaning against his black SUV about 50 yards away, arms crossed, a cigar between his teeth. He wasn't hiding, wasn't pretending he had somewhere else to be. He was just watching, a faint smile on his face. Next to him stood 2 men in dark suits, private security, judging by their builds and the way they stood, weight balanced, hands loose at their sides, ready. Ragnar's growl started low, building in intensity. It wasn't a sound Kieran had heard from any dog before. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like a machine powering up, gears grinding, something dangerous waking from sleep. "Easy," Kieran murmured, his hand tightening on the leash. "Easy, boy." But Ragnar took a step forward, pulling against the lead. His lips curled back, revealing teeth that looked designed to tear through Kevlar. Vance noticed. He said something to one of the security guards, and the man laughed. Then Vance pushed off the SUV and started walking toward them. Kieran's pulse spiked. He wrapped the leash twice around his fist, bracing his weight. "Ragnar, sit!" The dog ignored him completely. His entire focus was on Vance, tracking his approach with the intensity of a missile lock. Vance stopped about 15 feet away, just outside what Kieran guessed was the dog's lunge radius. Up close, in the natural light, Vance looked older than he had inside the pavilion. There were lines around his eyes, a hardness to his jaw. He studied Ragnar with an expression Kieran couldn't quite read. Not fear, something else. Recognition, maybe. "You know," Vance said, his voice carrying easily across the distance, "I actually remember this dog. Sponsored his training program 2 years ago. Bright Dog Security Solutions. Cost me 40 grand to put him through the tactical certification course." He took the cigar from his mouth, tapping ash onto the pavement. "Biggest waste of money I ever spent." Kieran didn't respond. He couldn't. All his concentration was focused on keeping Ragnar from launching himself forward. Vance seemed to sense this. His smile widened. "They told me he had potential. Elite bloodlines. Father was a military working dog, served 2 tours overseas. Mother was a champion Schutzhund competitor. On paper, he should have been perfect." He paused, his gaze shifting from the dog to Kieran. But something was wrong with him. Trainers said he had no discipline, wouldn't follow commands when it counted. During the final certification, they set up a mock home invasion scenario. You know what he did? Kieran's jaw was clenched so tight his teeth ached. "What?" "Nothing," Vance said, almost laughing. "The target was right in front of him, and he just froze, refused to engage. They ran the test 3 times, same result, so they washed him out. Labeled him defective." He took a long drag from the cigar, exhaling smoke through his nose. "I told them to put him down. Cheaper than trying to rehome him. But the kennel master had a soft spot, thought maybe someone would want a broken guard dog." Ragnar's growl intensified, his entire body vibrating. Vance's expression shifted, something cold sliding behind his eyes. "Looks like they were right. Found a buyer just as broken as the dog." He glanced at Kieran's truck, at the rust and the cracked windshield, and the bungee cords holding the tailgate shut. "How much longer you think you can keep that thing running? Month? 2? "That's none of your business," Kieran said, his voice low. "It became my business when your property tax lien landed on my desk," Vance replied easily. 1247 Oakmont Street, 3 bedrooms, 1 bath. Assessed value 68,000, which is generous considering the foundation's cracked and the roof leaks. You owe 7,000 in back taxes. My company bought that debt last month for pennies on the dollar." He smiled. "Which means I own you now." The words landed like physical blows. Kieran's vision tunneled. "You can't just—" "I can," Vance interrupted. "And I will. You've got until Monday to vacate. After that, I'm bringing in the bulldozers. That whole street's coming down. New development. Luxury townhomes, starting price 400,000. He looked Kieran up and down, his smile turning sharp. "Obviously not for people like you." Kieran wanted to swing, wanted to drop the leash and tackle this man into the pavement and make him eat every word. But he didn't, because Elodie was waiting for him at his sister's house. Because one assault charge would mean losing her permanently. Because he couldn't afford to lose control, not now, not ever. So instead, he forced his breathing to steady, forced his hands to unclench. "We'll see about that." Vance laughed, a genuine sound of delight. "No, we won't, but I appreciate the optimism." He turned to walk away, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "Oh, and Wallace? That dog?" He pointed with the cigar. "I'd keep him locked up if I were you. Something like that gets loose, hurts somebody. You won't just lose your house. You'll lose everything." He walked back to the SUV, his security detail falling into step behind him. The engine rumbled to life, and the vehicle pulled out of the lot, gravel crunching under its tires. The moment it was out of sight, Ragnar's growl cut off. He sat down heavily, panting, his tongue lolling out, but his eyes stayed locked on the spot where the SUV had been, like he was memorizing the direction it had gone. Kieran exhaled shakily, his hands trembling as he unwrapped the leash from around his fist. Red marks creased his palm where the leather had dug in. "Come on, boy," he said quietly. "Let's go home." This time, Ragnar didn't hesitate. He jumped into the truck and settled onto the nest of blankets, curling into a tight ball. Kieran closed the door and walked around to the driver's side, sliding behind the wheel. He sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring at the peeling dashboard. The engine wouldn't start on the first try. It never did. He turned the key. The starter clicked and whined, turned it again. The engine coughed, sputtered, and finally caught. Kieran shifted into gear and pulled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, the white pavilion grew smaller, the chandeliers inside still glowing gold against the approaching dusk. He glanced at Ragnar. The dog was still curled up, but his eyes were open, watching the world pass by through the window. "You know something about him, don't you?" Kieran said softly. About Vance, Ragnar's ear twitched, the only sign he'd heard. Kieran focused on the road, the truck's transmission grinding as he shifted into third. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and deep purple. He had 48 hours before Vance came for his home. 48 hours to figure out how to protect the only thing he had left. As the truck merged onto the highway, Kieran didn't notice the folder on the passenger seat slipping open. Didn't see the training documents inside, the pages marked with red stamps and handwritten notes. One page, crumpled and shoved near the back, had a note scrawled in the margin. "Subject refuses to engage target. Possible olfactory trigger. Recommend psychological evaluation." And beneath that, in smaller print, training sponsor present during incident, S. Vance. The folder slid shut as the truck hit a pothole, the secrets inside remaining hidden. For now. Why did Ragnar freeze during his final certification test? The porch light was on when Kieran pulled into the driveway. The house looked smaller than he remembered, like it had shrunk during the hours he'd been gone. Faded blue siding, white trim that was more grey now, peeling in strips. The windows were dark except for the living room, where a single lamp cast a warm glow behind the curtains. Home, except it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a memory of something that used to be safe. Kieran killed the engine and sat in the silence. The truck ticked as it cooled. Next to him, Ragnar was alert, his head up, ears swiveling toward every sound. A car passing on the street behind them. Wind rustling through the oak tree in the front yard. Somewhere far off, a train horn. "This is it," Kieran said, more to himself than the dog. "Not much, but it's ours." He opened the door and stepped out. Ragnar followed, landing on the cracked concrete driveway, with barely a sound despite his size. The dog's nose immediately went to work, sniffing the ground, the air, the base of the porch steps, cataloguing everything. Kieran unlocked the front door and pushed it open. The hinges creaked. Inside, the house smelled like the lavender air freshener his sister had left on the counter, trying to mask the scent of age and disrepair. The hardwood floors were scratched and worn. The furniture was a mismatched collection of thrift store finds and hand-me-downs. But it was clean. Kieran made sure of that. Elodie deserved clean. Ragnar stepped inside, his nails clicking against the wood. He didn't rush, didn't explore with the excited energy of a normal dog entering a new space. Instead, he moved methodically, checking each room with the precision of a soldier clearing a building. Kitchen, clear. Bathroom, clear. Elodie's bedroom. He paused at the doorway, nose working overtime, processing the scent of the little girl who lived here, but wasn't here now. Then he moved on. Kieran watched, fascinated and unnerved. This wasn't pet behavior. This was tactical assessment. When Ragnar finished his sweep, he returned to the living room and sat in the corner, where he had a clear view of both the front door and the hallway leading to the bedrooms. He didn't lie down, just sat, watching, waiting. Kieran locked the door behind them, throwing the deadbolt and the chain. He moved through the house, checking windows, making sure the alarm system was armed. Green lights blinked on the panel by the door. Armed. Stay mode. All sensors active. It should have made him feel safer. It didn't. He collapsed onto the couch, his body suddenly heavy with exhaustion. The adrenaline from the auction, from the confrontation with Vance, was draining away, leaving him hollow. He pulled out his phone and called his sister. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, how'd it go?" "I got him," Kieran said. A pause. "You actually went through with it?" "Yeah." "Kieran," she sighed, and he could picture her in her apartment across town, shaking her head, trying to decide if she should yell at him or just let it go. "How much did you spend?" $2,000. Jesus, that was your truck money." "I know." Another pause, longer this time, then softer. "Is Elodie still asleep?" "Yeah, out cold. You want me to bring her back tonight or wait until morning?" Kieran glanced at the clock on the wall. Almost 8. "Morning's fine. Let her rest. I need to get things ready her." "All right. Call me if you need anything." She hesitated. "And Kieran, be careful. I know you think this dog is going to fix things, but—" "I'll be careful," he interrupted, not wanting to hear the rest of the sentence. They said goodbye, and he hung up. The house settled into silence again. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood adjusting to the temperature. Kieran looked at Ragnar. The dog hadn't moved. His eyes reflected the lamplight, twin amber discs floating in the shadows. "You hungry?" Kieran asked. No response. Just that steady, unblinking stare. Kieran went to the kitchen and pulled out the bag of high-protein kibble he'd bought earlier that week. He filled a bowl and set it on the floor, along with a bowl of fresh water. Ragnar didn't move. "Come on, boy. You've got to eat." Still nothing. Kieran realized what was happening. Hierarchy. The dog was waiting for permission, or maybe waiting for Kieran to eat first. He grabbed a protein bar from the cupboard, tore it open, and took a bite. Then he pointed at the bowl. "Okay, your turn." Ragnar rose smoothly and walked to the bowl. He ate efficiently, without enthusiasm, like he was fueling a machine. When he finished, he drank half the water bowl and returned to his corner. Kieran sank back onto the couch and pulled out the manila folder from the auction. He flipped through the pages. Medical records showed Ragnar was up to date on shots. No major health issues. Training records were more interesting. Dozens of exercises, each rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Obedience, 9. Tracking, 10. Bite work, 10. Aggression control, 3. That last one had a note. Subject displays extreme reluctance to release bite on command. Handler intervention required multiple times. Then came the incident reports. 3 different handlers had filed complaints. Bitten during training, bitten during transport, bitten during a routine examination, all justified according to the notes. Self-defense, reaction to perceived threat. Kieran kept reading. Near the back of the folder he found the final evaluation form, the one that had washed Ragnar out of the program. Certification test, home invasion scenario. Subject failed to engage target despite multiple commands. Exhibited signs of stress. Excessive panting, refusal to make eye contact with target, physical retreat. Conclusion. Subject lacks necessary aggression drive for tactical deployment. Recommend reassignment to lower stress role or retirement. And at the bottom, indifferent handwriting. Training sponsor S. Vance, present during test. Requested immediate termination of subject. Overruled by facility director. Kieran's hands tightened on the paper. Vance had been there, had watched Ragnar fail, had wanted him put down. Why? A sound pulled him from his thoughts. Ragnar's head had snapped toward the hallway. Ears forward, every muscle tensed. Kieran sat up slowly. "What is it, boy?" The dog rose to his feet, moving toward the hallway with slow, deliberate steps. Kieran followed, his heart rate picking up. The hallway was dark. He flipped the light switch. Nothing. Just empty space. Elodie's door was open a crack, the way he always left it, so he could hear if she called out in the night. But Ragnar was staring at that door, like there was something behind it. Kieran's mouth went dry. "Hello?" Silence. He walked past Ragnar and pushed the door open wider. Elodie's room was exactly as he'd left it. Bed made with the unicorn comforter she'd picked out 3 Christmases ago. Stuffed animals lined up on the shelf. Her mother's shawl, the one she carried everywhere now, folded on the nightstand. The window was closed, locked. The alarm sensor's green light blinked steadily. Kieran exhaled. "It's okay. There's nothing here." But when he turned around, Ragnar was still staring into the room. Not at the window, at the closet. The closet door was closed. Kieran knew because he'd closed it himself that morning. But now, in the dim light from the hallway, he could see a thin line of shadow where the door didn't quite meet the frame. It was open, just a crack. Kieran's hand moved to the closet door. He pulled it open quickly, half expecting something to lunge out. Clothes on hangers, shoes on the floor, a plastic bin full of toys, nothing else. Ragnar pushed past him, sticking his head into the closet, sniffing every corner. Then he backed out, turned in a tight circle, and sat down in the middle of the room, facing the door. "You're going to give me a heart attack," Kieran muttered. He closed the closet firmly, checked the window lock one more time, and ushered Ragnar out of the room. Back in the hallway, he pulled Elodie's door shut until only a sliver of space remained. Ragnar returned to the living room and resumed his position in the corner. Kieran tried to sleep on the couch, but every time he closed his eyes, his brain replayed the confrontation with Vance. 48 hours. Monday morning. Bulldozers. He must have dozed off eventually. because he woke to the sound of Ragnar's nails on the floor. The dog was moving through the house again, checking windows, checking doors. Kieran glanced at his phone. 2:30 in the morning. "Ragnar, come." The dog ignored him, completing his patrol before returning to his corner. This happened twice more before dawn. Each time, Kieran would wake to the sound of movement, and each time, Ragnar would be making his rounds. When the first grey light of morning finally crept through the windows, Kieran gave up on sleep and got up. He made coffee, strong and black, and stood at the kitchen window, watching the sun rise. The neighborhood was quiet. A few cars passed, a jogger in reflective gear. Normal, peaceful. But Kieran couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that Ragnar's patrols weren't paranoia, that the dog knew something he didn't. At 8:30, his sister's car pulled into the driveway. Kieran opened the door before she could knock. Elodie was standing on the porch in her purple jacket and light-up sneakers, clutching her mother's shawl. Her hair was in 2 braids, and her eyes were wide, curious. Then she saw Ragnar. The dog was standing in the living room, visible through the open doorway. He wasn't moving, wasn't making a sound, but his presence filled the space. Massive, dark, predatory. Elodie's face went pale. She took a step backward, pressing herself against her aunt's legs. "Elodie, it's okay," Kieran said quickly, crouching down to her level. "This is Ragnar. He's here to keep us safe." She shook her head, small and frantic. Kieran's sister, Janelle, gave him a look that said, "This is exactly what I was worried about." "Maybe give her some time," she suggested gently. "Yeah," Kieran said, his chest tight. "Yeah, okay." He stood and opened his arms. Elodie ran to him, burying her face in his shoulder. He held her, feeling her small heart racing against his ribs. Inside, Ragnar lay down, making himself as small as a 90-pound dog could. He rested his head on his paws and closed his eyes, as if understanding that his presence was too much, too soon. Kieran carried Elodie inside, and Janelle followed with her overnight bag. They spent the morning trying to coexist. Elodie stayed in her room, door cracked open, peeking out occasionally to make sure the beast was still there. Ragnar stayed in his corner, barely moving. Lunch was silent. Dinner was worse. By the time night fell, Kieran felt like he'd made a terrible mistake. The dog was supposed to help. Instead, his daughter was more terrified than ever. He tucked Elodie into bed, reading her favorite story twice, trying to make her smile. She didn't. Just stared at the ceiling, her hand wrapped around the edge of her mother's shawl. "I love you," Kieran whispered, kissing her forehead. She didn't respond. He left the door cracked and returned to the living room. Ragnar was exactly where he'd been all day. Patient. Waiting. "This has to work," Kieran said quietly. "Please, she needs you. We need you." The dog's eyes opened, amber and knowing. Then the lights went out. All of them. The lamp, the alarm panel, the kitchen nightlight. The house plunged into absolute darkness. Kieran's breath caught. "What the—" From down the hallway came a sound that turned his blood to ice. A whimper. Small. Terrified. Elodie. Then, a second later, footsteps. Not his. Not hers. What just cut the power? Thunder split the sky like the world was tearing in half. Kieran was halfway down the hall when the second crash came, so loud it rattled the windows in their frames. He'd grabbed his phone for light, the screen casting a pale blue glow that barely cut through the darkness. The battery icon showed 12%. "Elodie!" he called out, trying to keep his voice steady even as his heart hammered against his ribs. "Daddy's coming, baby." The whimper came again, louder this time, from behind her closed door. Not cracked like he'd left it. Closed. He pushed it open and swept the phone's light across the room. Elodie was curled into a ball in the corner between her bed and the wall, both hands clamped over her ears, eyes squeezed shut. Tears streaked down her face, catching the light. The window rattled. Outside, rain hammered against the glass in sheets so thick it sounded like gravel hitting the house. Lightning flashed, turning the room white for a split second, and in that brief illumination, Kieran saw his daughter's face, twisted in pure terror. He moved toward her, but froze when he realized what had made the footsteps sound. The closet door was open, wide open, swinging slightly on its hinges from the air pressure changes as the storm rolled through. That was all. Just wind. Not an intruder. Not a threat. But Elodie didn't know that. She was somewhere else. Some other night. Some other storm. The night 2 years ago, when her mother's screams had mixed with thunder and breaking glass. "Elodie, sweetheart, I'm right here." Kieran knelt beside her, reaching out slowly. "It's just a storm. You're safe. I promise." She flinched away from his touch, her whole body trembling. Her breathing was too fast, shallow gasps that weren't getting enough air. Panic attack. She'd had them before. The doctors called it trauma response, said she needed therapy, medication, time. But time hadn't helped. Nothing had helped. Kieran tried to remember what the therapist had said. Ground her. Help her find something real to focus on. "Elodie, can you look at me? Just look at Daddy." She didn't. Couldn't. Her eyes stayed shut, tears leaking from the corners. Another crack of thunder shook the house. The lights flickered, but didn't come back on. Kieran's phone battery dropped to 9%. He was trying to figure out what to do next when he heard it. A sound from the hallway. Low and steady. Not the wind, not the storm. Breathing. Heavy. Rhythmic. Kieran turned, his phone light sweeping toward the doorway. Ragnar stood there, silent. He must have moved down the hall without a sound, because Kieran hadn't heard him coming. The dog's eyes reflected the phone's light, glowing like embers. For a moment they just stared at each other. Then Ragnar did something Kieran didn't expect. He lowered himself to the ground, slowly, deliberately, flattening his body until his belly was pressed against the hardwood floor. He crawled forward on his elbows, moving in slow motion, making himself as small and non-threatening as a 90-pound dog could possibly be. "Ragnar, stay," Kieran said automatically, but the dog kept coming. He crawled across the threshold into Elodie's room, crawled past Kieran, crawled right up to the corner where the little girl was curled in on herself, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. And then he stopped. Just stopped, inches away from her. Close enough that she'd feel his presence, but not close enough to invade her space. Kieran held his breath. Ragnar's breathing changed. It slowed, deepened, long, deliberate inhales and exhales, in, out, like a metronome, like a heartbeat, like the rhythm of waves on a shore. Elodie's hands were still clamped over her ears, but her body had gone still. She was listening, sensing. The dog shifted, just barely, nudging his massive head under her arm. Not forcing, just offering. A warm, solid presence in the dark. Outside, the storm raged. Thunder, wind, rain against glass. But inside this room, in this small corner, something else was happening. Elodie's breathing was slowing, matching his. In, out, Her hands loosened from her ears. One of them, the left, moved hesitantly, trembling until her fingers touched fur. Thick, warm, real. She buried her hand in Ragnar's coat, and for the first time in 2 years, she stopped shaking. Kieran's throat tightened. He wanted to say something. Wanted to tell the dog thank you. Wanted to tell his daughter he loved her. Wanted to make some sound that expressed the overwhelming relief crashing through him. But he didn't. Because this wasn't about him. This was between them. The broken girl and the broken dog, finding something in each other that the rest of the world couldn't give them. He backed out of the room quietly, pulling, the door halfway closed, leaving them space. In the hallway, he leaned against the wall and let out a shaky breath. His hands were trembling. 9% battery. The power was still out. He needed to check the breaker box in the basement, needed to figure out what had killed the electricity. Storm surge, probably, or a blown transformer somewhere down the street. He made his way to the kitchen, using his phone's dying light to navigate. The basement door was next to the refrigerator. He pulled it open and started down the stairs, the wood creaking under his weight. The basement was unfinished, all concrete and exposed beams, and the musty smell of dampness. The breaker box was on the far wall. Kieran flipped switches, checking the labels. Main, kitchen, living room, bedrooms, everything was in the on position. So it wasn't the breakers, it was external. He climbed back upstairs and went to the living room window, peering out through the rain-streaked glass. The streetlights were out. The neighbor's porch light was dark. The whole block had gone black. His phone buzzed. Text from Janelle. "Power out at my place, too. You guys okay?" He typed back. "Yeah, storm's bad. How long do outages usually last in this area?" 3 dots appeared. Then, couple hours, maybe. Could be longer if a tree came down on the lines. Stay inside. Be safe. Kieran pocketed the phone. 7% battery left. He went to the kitchen and found the emergency candles in the drawer under the sink. He lit 3 of them and placed them around the living room, their flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. Then he checked the locks on the doors. Front door, deadbolt, chain, back door. Same. Everything was secure, but he couldn't shake the feeling he'd had earlier, the sense that something was watching, waiting. He returned to Elodie's room and carefully pushed the door open a crack. The sight inside made his chest ache. She was asleep, curled on her side on the floor, using Ragnar as a pillow. Her hand was still buried in his fur, her face pressed against his shoulder. The dog was awake, eyes open, staring at the doorway. But his breathing remained slow and steady, keeping time like a metronome. When he saw Kieran, Ragnar's tail moved once, a small thump against the floor. Acknowledgement. Kieran nodded. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. He pulled the door closed again and headed back to the living room. The storm was starting to ease. The thunder was growing distant, the rain lightening from a roar to a steady drum. He sat on the couch, watching the candles flicker, listening to the house settle around him. His mind drifted to Vance's words. 48 hours. Monday morning. Bulldozers. He had no plan. No idea how to fight a real estate company, with lawyers and money and the legal system on their side. He was just one man. One broke, desperate man with a mute daughter and a dog the world had thrown away. His phone buzzed again. 4% battery. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him swipe to accept. "Hello?" Silence, just the faint crackle of a bad connection. "Hello," Kieran said again. Then a voice, low, distorted, like someone speaking through a scrambler. "You should have stayed out of this." Kieran sat up straight. "Who is this?" "Monday morning. Be smart. Take the girl and leave. Don't make this harder than it has to be." The line went dead. Kieran stared at the phone, his pulse pounding in his ears. He tried to call back. The call wouldn't connect. He checked the number. Unknown. No caller ID. No trace. His hands were shaking again. He set the phone down on the coffee table and stood, pacing the room. This wasn't just about property taxes. This wasn't just business. Someone wanted him gone, specifically, urgently. Why? He thought about Vance's face at the auction, the way he'd looked at Ragnar, the muttered words, "That dog should be dead," and the training logs, the certification test, Ragnar freezing when faced with a target that smelled wrong, olfactory trigger. Kieran's mind raced. He moved back to the kitchen, grabbed the manila folder from where he'd left it on the counter, and flipped through the pages by candlelight. His eyes scanned the incident reports, the final evaluation, the handwritten note at the bottom. "Training sponsor S. Vance, present during test." Kieran read it again, and again, pieces clicking together in his head. Not a complete picture yet, but the outline of something dark. Vance had sponsored Ragnar's training, had been present during the test, had wanted the dog terminated immediately after it failed. Why would a real estate developer care that much about one failed police dog? Unless it wasn't about the dog at all. Kieran's phone died, the screen going black. 3% had been optimistic. He set the folder down and walked to the window, staring out at the rain. The storm was nearly over now. Just a light drizzle. The clouds were breaking apart, revealing patches of dark sky. And at the end of the driveway, barely visible through the wet glass, was a vehicle. Black SUV, engine off, lights off, just sitting there. Kieran's blood ran cold. He couldn't see inside. The tinted windows were too dark. But he knew. He knew someone was watching. He stepped back from the window, heart hammering, moved quickly to the front door, checked the locks again, checked the alarm panel. Still dead. No power. From down the hall came a sound. Nails on wood. Ragnar was moving. Kieran turned just as the dog appeared in the hallway. He wasn't calm anymore. His hackles were raised, fur standing in a ridge along his spine. His lips were pulled back slightly. Not a full snarl, but close. And his eyes were locked on the front door. He knew. Somehow, he knew someone was out there. Kieran grabbed the baseball bat from the coat closet, gripped it tight, waited. Seconds stretched into minutes. The house was silent except for the sound of his own breathing and the faint patter of rain. Then, from outside, came the sound of a car door closing. Soft, careful, like someone didn't want to be heard. Ragnar's growl started low, building in his chest like a diesel engine warming up. Kieran's grip tightened on the bat. "Easy, boy," he whispered. "Easy." Footsteps on the gravel driveway. Slow, measured, coming closer. They stopped at the porch steps. Kieran held his breath. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, deliberate strikes on the front door. Kieran didn't move, didn't answer. Just stood there in the dark with a dog that looked ready to tear through the door, and a bat that suddenly felt like a useless piece of wood. Another knock, louder, then a voice, muffled through the door, but clear enough. "Mr. Wallace, I know you're in there. Open the door. It wasn't Vance. Different voice. Younger. Harder. Who are you? Kieran called out. Someone trying to help you. You've got 30 seconds to decide if you want that help or not. Ragnar's growl intensified. Kieran's mind raced. Could be a trap. Could be someone Vance sent to scare him. Could be. 20 seconds. He moved to the window, angling himself so he could see the porch without being fully visible. A man stood there, tall, lean, wearing a dark jacket with the collar turned up against the rain. He wasn't holding a weapon, wasn't aggressive, just standing there, hands in his pockets, waiting. 10 seconds. After that, I'm gone, and you're on your own. Kieran made a decision he wasn't sure was smart. He unlocked the door, kept the chain on, opened it 3 inches. The man on the porch looked to be in his early 40s. Dark skin, close-cropped hair, a scar running through his left eyebrow. His eyes were sharp, assessing. "What do you want?" Kieran asked. The man glanced at Ragnar, who was visible through the gap in the door, teeth bared. "Nice dog. He remember me?" Kieran frowned. "Should he? I was one of his trainers. Name's Marcus Webb. I worked at Bright Dog Security Solutions 2 years ago." He pulled out a wallet and flipped it open, showing an ID card. Sure enough, Marcus Webb, K9 tactical instructor. The photo matched. Kieran's grip on the bat loosened slightly. "Why are you here?" Marcus looked over his shoulder, scanning the street. "Because you bought a dog that someone very powerful wants dead. And because I think you need to know why." He reached into his jacket. Kieran tensed, but Marcus pulled out a flash drive, held it up. "Everything you need is on here. Training footage, audio recordings, documents that didn't make it into your folder." He paused. Proof that Sterling Vance didn't just sponsor Ragnar's training. He sabotaged it. Kieran stared at the flash drive. Why would he do that? Marcus's expression was grim. Because that dog recognized him, and if anyone ever figured out why, Vance's whole empire would burn. He held out the flash drive. Kieran's hand moved toward it. Behind him, Ragnar's growl cut off, abruptly. The dog went still, not calm. Alert, his head turned toward the back of the house. Marcus noticed. "You expecting company?" "No." From somewhere in the backyard came the sound of breaking glass. What did Ragnar just hear? The flash drive hit the floor. Kieran didn't remember dropping it. His brain was 3 steps behind his body, which had already spun toward the sound, toward the back of the house, where something had just shattered. Marcus was inside before Kieran could stop him. Chain be damned. He'd shouldered through the door with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd breached rooms for a living. "How many exits?" he asked, voice low and clipped. 2, front and back." "Windows?" 6, all locked." "Not anymore." Ragnar was already moving, a shadow flowing down the hallway towards the kitchen. No barking, no warning sounds, just pure, silent focus. Kieran grabbed the bat tighter and followed, Marcus a step behind. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the dying glow of a candle on the counter. The back door was still closed, still locked, but the window above the sink. Glass littered the counter. Shards glittered in the candlelight like scattered diamonds. The window was open, curtain billowing inward from the wind and rain. And on the floor, just inside the window frame, was a brick, red clay, the kind used in the new construction going up all over the neighborhood. Wrapped around it was a piece of paper, secured with a rubber band. Nobody was climbing through. Not yet. This was a message Marcus moved to the window and looked out into the backyard. "Clear! Whoever threw it is gone." Kieran picked up the brick, his hands shaking. He peeled off the rubber band and unfolded the paper. The message was typed. Block letters, no signature. "Last warning. Leave by Sunday night or your daughter pays." The words blurred. Kieran read them again and again. Each time they hit harder. Your daughter pays. His vision tunneled. The edges of the kitchen went dark. All he could see was that sentence, burned into his retinas like he'd stared at the sun too long. "Kieran." Marcus's voice sounded far away. "Kieran, look at me." He couldn't. His hands were crushing the paper, crumpling it into a tight ball. A hand gripped his shoulder, firm, grounding. "Breathe. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Do it." Kieran forced air into his lungs. Once, twice. The tunnel vision started to recede. "Good. Now listen to me. This is a scare tactic. They want you panicked. They want you making stupid decisions. Don't give them that." Kieran looked up. Marcus's expression was hard, but not unkind. Behind him, Ragnar stood at attention, eyes fixed on the broken window, like he was memorizing the trajectory of the throw. "They threatened my daughter," Kieran said, his voice raw. "I know, and that means they're desperate. People don't make threats like this unless they're running out of time." "Running out of time for what?" Marcus bent down and picked up the flash drive he'd dropped near the door. He held it up. "For keeping you from finding out what's on here." Kieran stared at the small piece of plastic. "What is it?" "Truth. The kind that gets people killed if they're not careful." Marcus moved to the kitchen table and pulled out a chair. "Sit. I'll make this quick because we don't have much time." Kieran sat. His legs felt weak. Ragnar moved to his side, pressing against his leg. The weight of the dog, the warmth, kept him grounded. Marcus remained standing, arms crossed. 2 years ago, Sterling Vance hired Bright Dog Security Solutions to train 6 dogs for his private security team. High-end stuff, executive protection. He paid top dollar, $40,000 per dog. I was assigned to Ragnar. Okay. Ragnar was special. Best dog I'd ever worked with. Smart, controlled, loyal. He passed every test with perfect scores. Obedience, tracking, bite work, everything. Marcus paused. Until the final certification. Kieran leaned forward. The home invasion scenario. Right. We set it up like always. Fake house. Paid actors playing the bad guys. Handler gives the command. Dog neutralizes the threat. Simple. Except Ragnar wouldn't do it. The report said he froze. He didn't freeze. He refused. Marcus's jaw tightened. The target we used that day was a guy named Cole. Good actor. Been with us for years. But that day, Vance insisted on being in the room. Said he wanted to observe his investment. And the second Ragnar got close to Cole, he shut down. Wouldn't engage. I gave the command 3 times. Nothing. Then Vance stepped in to help. Got right up in the scenario space. And that's when Ragnar lost it. Kieran's pulse quickened. Lost it? How? He turned on Vance, not Cole. Vance went from 0 to full aggression in half a second. We're talking teeth out, targeting center mass. If I hadn't pulled him back, he would have torn Vance apart. The room was silent, except for the rain, softer now, a gentle patter against the broken window. "Why?" Kieran asked. Marcus met his eyes. Because Ragnar recognized Vance's scent, and whatever memory that scent triggered, it was bad enough to override 2 years of training. Kieran's mind raced. Scent memory. Dogs could remember smells for years, decades even. If Ragnar had encountered Vance before the training program, if something had happened. Vance demanded we terminate him immediately, Marcus continued. Said the dog was defective, dangerous, liability. But our director refused, said we'd try to rehome him instead. Vance was furious, threatened to pull his funding, sue us, destroy our reputation. But he didn't, no, because 3 days later, our facility had a break-in. Someone trashed the office, stole hard drives, deleted files. Everything related to Ragnar's training disappeared, except for the basics, the stuff in your folder. Kieran looked at the flash drive. But not everything. I kept backups. Call it paranoia. Call it covering my ass. I don't know, but I copied everything before it vanished. Footage, audio, notes, it's all on there. Marcus's expression darkened. Including video of the certification test. You can see it yourself. The moment Ragnar recognized Vance. The look on Vance's face when he realized the dog knew him. Knew him from where? Marcus shook his head. That's the part I don't have. But I can tell you this. 6 months after Ragnar washed out, Bright Dog Security Solutions went bankrupt. Building condemned. Everyone laid off. And the property? Bought by a shell company, which was bought by another shell company, which, if you dig deep enough, ties back to Vance Development LLC. The pieces were falling into place, slowly. Jagged edges that didn't quite fit yet, but were forming a picture. You think Vance shut down the facility to cover his tracks, Kieran said. I don't think. I know. He buried everything. The only reason I'm still breathing is because I kept my mouth shut and got out of town for a while. Marcus leaned forward. But now you've got the dog, and you've got Vance's attention, which means you're in serious danger. From down the hall came a soft sound, a door creaking open, footsteps, small, hesitant. Elodie. Kieran stood quickly, moving toward the hallway. She was standing there in her pajamas, clutching her mother's shawl, eyes wide. She'd heard the glass break, had probably been awake the whole time, too scared to come out. Hey, baby, Kieran said softly, crouching down. It's okay. Just an accident. Her gaze shifted past him to Marcus, to the broken window, to the shattered glass on the counter. She knew it wasn't an accident. Even without words, she knew. Ragnar moved to her side, pressing his body against hers. She grabbed onto his fur instinctively, fingers digging in. Marcus watched this, something shifting in his expression. She doesn't talk. Not since her mother died, Kieran said quietly. Marcus was silent for a moment. Then he straightened. You need to get her out of here. Tonight, take her somewhere safe. Somewhere Vance can't reach. I'm not running. Then you're an idiot. Maybe. But this is my house, my home. If I leave, he wins. And people like Vance always win when good people run. Marcus studied him, then nodded slowly. All right. Your funeral. But at least look at what's on the drive. Arm yourself with information. And for God's sake, keep that dog close. He's the only reason you're still alive. He moved toward the front door. Kieran followed, Elodie and Ragnar trailing behind. At the door, Marcus paused. One more thing. Vance isn't working alone. He's got people. Cops, lawyers, muscle. Be smart. Don't trust anyone you don't have to. Why are you helping me? Marcus glanced at Ragnar. Because I trained that dog for 2 years, watched him grow, watched him bond with his handlers. He's not defective. He's not broken. And neither are you. He opened the door and stepped out into the drizzle. Watch your back, Kieran. Then he was gone, disappearing into the rain. Kieran closed the door, locked it, checked the chain. Then he turned to find Elodie staring up at him, her dark eyes full of questions she couldn't ask. He picked her up, holding her tight. She was too big to be carried like this anymore, but she didn't protest, just wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face in his shoulder. "We're going to be okay," he whispered into her hair. "I promise." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure if he believed it. He carried her back to her room, tucked her into bed, and waited until her breathing evened out into sleep. Ragnar lay on the floor beside her bed, eyes open, watching. Then Kieran returned to the kitchen. He found his laptop in the living room, battery half charged. He plugged in the flash drive and opened the files. There were dozens, video files, audio recordings, scanned documents. He clicked on the first video. It was footage from a security camera mounted in the corner of a training room. Date stamp: 2 years ago. October 14th. The room was set up like a living room. Couch, TV, coffee table, a door at the far end. Ragnar was on a lead, held by a trainer Kieran didn't recognize. Standing off to the side, arms crossed, was Vance, a voice over the intercom. "Certification test. Home invasion scenario. Subject, Ragnar. Handler, Stevens. Begin." The door at the far end opened. A man entered, dressed in black, face obscured by a ski mask. The actor. Cole. "Attack!" the handler commanded. Ragnar tensed, started forward, then stopped. His head swiveled toward Vance. His nostrils flared, and every muscle in his body locked up. Vance stepped forward, moving closer to the scenario. He said something Kieran couldn't hear. Ragnar's lips pulled back, a snarl, silent and deadly. Then the dog lunged, not at Cole, at Vance. The handler yanked back on the lead, barely holding him. Vance stumbled backward, face pale. And in that split second, the cameras caught his expression. Not anger, not surprise. Fear. Pure, primal fear. Like he knew exactly why the dog wanted to kill him. The video cut off. Kieran sat back, hands trembling. He clicked on the next file. An audio recording. Voices. Vance and someone else. "Can't have that animal alive. It knows. I don't care how much it costs. Make it disappear." "Boss, it's just a dog. It can't talk." "No, but it can react. And if the wrong person sees that reaction, they'll start asking questions. Questions I can't afford." "What do you want me to do?" "I already told you. Put it down. Tonight." The recording ended. Kieran's heart was pounding. He opened another file, a scanned document, police report, date, 2 years ago, November 3rd. Incident, home invasion, 1247 Oakmont Street. Victim, Mara Wallace. Deceased. Suspect, unknown. No arrests made. Kieran's hands went numb. He read the details. Forced entry through a rear window. Victim confronted the intruder. Struggle. Fatal injury. And at the bottom, in the notes section. Witness reported smelling strong cologne at the scene. Expensive, possibly custom blend. The laptop screen blurred. Tears burned Kieran's eyes. Cologne, expensive, custom blend. The same cologne Vance wore. Cedar and tobacco. Unmistakable. Kieran closed the laptop, stood, walked to the window, stared out into the dark, rain-soaked street. The SUV was back, idling at the end of the driveway, watching. Ragnar appeared at his side, pressing against his leg. A low growl rumbled in the dog's chest. Kieran's hands curled into fists, his vision sharpened. The fear drained away, replaced by something colder. Harder. Vance hadn't just tried to destroy his home. He'd destroyed his family, killed his wife, traumatized his daughter. and now he was coming back to finish the job. "Not this time," Kieran said quietly. Ragnar's growl intensified. Outside, the SUV's headlights flicked on, and from somewhere in the house, Kieran's phone, plugged in and finally charging, buzzed with a new message. He picked it up. Unknown number. The message was simple. "You have 24 hours." What is Kieran going to do when they come for him tomorrow? The photograph slipped from between the pages and landed face up on the table. Kieran's breath stopped. His hands froze over the keyboard. The laptop screen still glowed with the police report from 2 years ago, but he wasn't looking at it anymore. He was staring at the photo that had just fallen from the stack of documents Marcus had put on the flash drive. It was a candid shot, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. The location was unfamiliar. Some kind of warehouse district, concrete buildings with rusted metal siding, loading docks. In the foreground, 3 men stood beside a black SUV, deep in conversation. Sterling Vance was on the left, his profile unmistakable even in the grainy image. The man in the middle wore a police uniform. Dark blue, silver badge catching the light. His face was turned just enough to be recognizable. Lieutenant James Harding, the same officer who'd handled Mara's case. The same officer who'd told Kieran there were no leads, no witnesses, no evidence worth pursuing. The third man was younger, built like he spent every free hour in a gym. Tactical vest, holstered weapon, private security, probably. One of Vance's crew. The date stamp on the photo read November 2nd, 2 years ago. 1 day before Mara died. Kieran's vision blurred at the edges. His chest tightened until breathing hurt. He forced air into his lungs and clicked on the next file. Another photo. Same location, different angle. This one showed the trunk of the SUV open. Inside were duffel bags, tools, something that looked like bolt cutters. Another file, a scanned document, email correspondence. The sender's address was masked, but the recipient was clear. Jarding, a city police on .gov. The message was short. Package delivered. Timeline confirmed. 0 exposure. Kieran clicked through more files. Bank statements, showing deposits into an offshore account registered to a J. Harding. $50,000, transferred 2 days after Mara's death. Another email. Incident resolved. Case closed. No further action required. The laptop screen swam. Kieran shoved his chair back and stood, pacing the small kitchen. Ragnar's eyes tracked him from the doorway, alert but patient. They'd planned it. Vance and Harding. The break-in wasn't random. It was a hit, staged to look like a burglary gone wrong. Mara had been in the way. Maybe she'd seen something. Maybe she'd asked too many questions about the gentrification, about the evictions, about the families being displaced. Or maybe Vance just needed the property cleared, needed the street empty so he could bulldoze it all and build his luxury condos without resistance. And Harding had helped him cover it up, had taken the payoff, had buried the evidence, had looked Kieran in the eye at the funeral and promised justice while knowing there would never be any. Kieran's hands were shaking. He gripped the edge of the counter, knuckles white. The rage was a living thing inside him, hot and sharp and demanding release. He wanted to drive to Vance's mansion right now, wanted to drag him out into the street and make him confess. Make him pay. But that would accomplish nothing except getting himself arrested. Or killed, he forced himself to think, to breathe, to focus. The flash drive was evidence, solid evidence, photos, financial records, emails, Enough to reopen the investigation, enough to destroy Vance and Harding both. But who could he trust with it? If Harding was dirty, how many other cops were on Vance's payroll? How deep did the corruption go? Kieran returned to the laptop and opened another file. Video footage, security camera. The timestamp showed it was from the night Mara died. The camera angle suggested it was from a traffic light or street pole. The video was dark, grainy. He could make out his street, his house. The porch light was on. Mara's car was in the driveway. At 11:47 p.m., a vehicle appeared. Dark sedan, no plates visible. It parked 3 houses down and killed the lights. 2 minutes later, a figure emerged from the passenger side. Tall, lean, moving with purpose. The person approached the house from the side, staying in the shadows, disappeared around back. Kieran's throat constricted. He knew what was about to happen. Knew and couldn't stop it, because this was the past, frozen in pixels and time stamps. At 11:52 p.m., lights inside the house came on. Movement visible through the windows, then the lights went out. All of them, sudden and complete. Silence. The video played on. Nothing moved. At 12:03 a.m., the figure reappeared, running, stumbling slightly. Got into the sedan. The car pulled away, headlights still off, vanishing into the dark. Kieran paused the video. Rewound, played it again, focused on the figure, the build, the gait. Something about the way the person moved was familiar, but he couldn't place it. He zoomed in on the car, tried to enhance the image, but the resolution was too low. No plates, no identifying features. Another file. Audio recording. Poor quality. Background noise, wind, traffic. Then a voice, muffled, agitated. It's done. She's gone. A second voice, calmer. Any complications? She fought back, made noise, had to improvise. Did anyone see you? No. Street was empty. In and out in 10 minutes. Good. Dispose of the tools, burn the clothes, and stay away from that area for the next month. What about the husband? He's not a problem. Just a carpenter. No connections, no resources. He'll grieve and move on. A pause, then the first voice again. What if he doesn't? Then we make him. The recording ended. Kieran sat frozen. The words echoed in his skull. She fought back. Mara had fought, had tried to protect herself, and they'd killed her for it. He closed the laptop before he put his fist through the screen. Stood. Paced. Ragnar rose and followed, maintaining a constant presence at his side. The clock on the wall showed 3:17 a.m. Sunday morning. He had until Monday, 24 hours minus change. He needed a plan, needed allies, needed something more than rage and a flash drive full of evidence nobody would look at. His phone buzzed. He grabbed it. Text from an unknown number. Check your front porch. Kieran's blood turned cold. He moved to the window, peering out through the gap in the curtains. The street was empty. No SUV. No movement. Ragnar's ears were forward, focused on the front door. A low rumble started in his chest. Kieran grabbed the bat and moved to the door, unlocked it, pulled it open. On the porch, sitting on the welcome mat, was a manila envelope. Thick, sealed. His name was written on the front in block letters. He looked left, right. Nobody. Just the empty street and the distant sound of an early morning garbage truck. He picked up the envelope and stepped back inside, locking the door. Ragnar sniffed it carefully, then sat back, watching. Kieran tore it open. Inside were more photos. These were recent, taken within the last few days. The first showed Elodie at the park, sitting on a swing. Kieran's sister was visible in the background, talking on her phone. The second showed Elodie leaving school, her backpack almost as big as she was. The third showed her through a window. Their window. She was in her bedroom, playing with her stuffed animals. Someone had been watching her, stalking her, getting close enough to photograph her through the glass. Kieran's hands crushed the photos. His vision went red. The rage he'd been trying to control erupted, white-hot and consuming. At the bottom of the envelope was a note, typed, simple. Last chance. Leave today, or we take her. The world tilted. Kieran stumbled backward, catching himself against the wall. His breath came in sharp gasps. The photos fell from his hands, scattering across the floor. Elodie. They were threatening Elodie, not just threatening the house or making vague warnings. They had her in their sights, had been close enough to touch her, and if he didn't run, they would take her. Ragnar pressed against his leg, grounding him. The dog's warmth, his solid presence, kept Kieran from spiraling completely. He forced himself to think, to focus. They wanted him scared, wanted him to pack up and disappear, which meant he still had leverage, still had something they were afraid of. The flash drive, the evidence. If he ran, they'd make the problem go away quietly. But if he stayed, if he fought, there was a chance he could expose them. A chance for justice. But at what cost? He thought about Elodie's face, her silence, the way she clutched her mother's shawl like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. If something happened to her, if Vance took her or hurt her, Kieran would never forgive himself. But if he ran, Vance would win, would keep hurting people, would keep destroying families, and Mara's death would mean nothing. Kieran's phone rang. He answered without checking the caller ID. "Mr. Wallace?" The voice was distorted, mechanized, the same voice from the previous call. "I trust you received our message." "Touch my daughter, and I'll kill you," Kieran said, his voice dead calm. A pause, then a laugh, cold and hollow. "Big words from a man with no options. You have until noon today. Pack your things, take the girl, leave the state. Do that, and you'll never hear from us again." "And if I don't?" "Then Monday morning, when the bulldozers arrive, you'll have bigger problems than eviction notices. Accidents happen on construction sites, Mr. Wallace. Tragic, unavoidable. Especially when children wander into dangerous areas." The line went dead. Kieran stared at the phone. His reflection stared back from the darkened screen. He looked like a stranger, hollow-eyed, desperate. He thought about running, about throwing everything into the truck, grabbing Elodie, and driving until they hit the ocean. Starting over somewhere Vance couldn't reach them. But he knew better. Men like Vance had long arms, money, connections. There was nowhere far enough. And even if there was, he'd spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder. Elodie would grow up in fear, never knowing safety, never understanding why. No, running wasn't the answer. He looked down at Ragnar. The dog was watching him, amber eyes intelligent and patient, waiting for a decision. Kieran crouched down, eye level with him. "You know who did this, don't you, boy? You've known all along." Ragnar's tail moved once, a slow, deliberate wag. "Then we finish it, together." He stood and moved back to the laptop, opened the flash drive files, and started copying everything to 3 separate locations: cloud storage, external hard drive, email draft saved in a burner account. If something happened to him, the evidence would still exist, still be findable. Then he made a call. The phone rang 4 times before a groggy voice answered. This better be life or death, man. It's 4 in the morning. Darius, it's Kieran. I need a favor. Darius Monroe had been Kieran's friend since high school. They'd lost touch after Mara died, but Darius had reached out every few months, checking in, making sure Kieran was still breathing. He was a freelance journalist now, the kind who dug into stories the big papers wouldn't touch. Kieran, man, what's going on? I need you to hold on to something for me. Insurance. If anything happens to me or Elodie, I need you to make sure it gets to the right people. A pause. Then Darius's voice sharpened, sleep vanishing. What kind of insurance? The kind that proves Sterling Vance murdered my wife. Silence. Then, I'm on my way. Kieran gave him the address and hung up. He looked at the photos scattered on the floor, at the laptop glowing with evidence, at Ragnar, still watching, still waiting. 24 hours until the bulldozers came. 24 hours to protect his daughter and expose the truth. He walked to Elodie's room and eased the door open. She was asleep, curled under her blankets, breathing soft and even, peaceful, innocent. He'd failed to protect Mara, but he wouldn't fail Elodie. Not again. Not ever. Kieran closed the door and returned to the kitchen. He pulled out a notebook and started writing. Names, timelines, connections, everything he knew, everything he could prove. By the time the sun rose, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, he had a plan. It was dangerous, maybe suicidal, but it was the only move he had left. And when Vance came for them, he'd be ready. How far will Kieran go to protect the only family he has left? The sound of hammering metal split the morning air. Kieran's hands didn't shake as he drove the nails through the 2x4s, reinforcing the back door frame. Sweat soaked through his shirt despite the cool October air. He'd been at this for 3 hours, ever since Darius had left with copies of the flash drive, promising to get the evidence to people who couldn't be bought. Now Kieran was fortifying, preparing, turning his small house into something that could withstand an assault, at least long enough for help to arrive, assuming help would come. The broken kitchen window was covered with plywood and screwed into the frame. Every other window had its locks reinforced with wooden dowels jammed into the tracks. The front and back doors now had additional deadbolts he'd installed himself. Industrial grade, the kind used in commercial buildings. Ragnar watched from the kitchen doorway, his presence a constant shadow. Every 20 minutes, like clockwork, the dog would make a circuit of the house, checking each entry point, each window. Then he'd return to his post and resume watching. Elodie sat at the kitchen table, coloring in a book Janelle had brought yesterday. She hadn't asked why her father was boarding up the house, hadn't asked about the broken glass or the strange man who'd visited in the middle of the night. She just colored, her small hand moving the crayon in careful circles, staying inside the lines. Kieran's phone buzzed. Text from Janelle. "Everything okay? You're not answering my calls," he typed back. "Fine, just busy. Can you keep Elodie today? Something came up." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "What's going on, Kieran? Nothing I can't handle. Please, just pick her up. I'll explain later." Another long pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Kieran pocketed the phone and turned to Elodie. "Aunt Janelle's going to come get you for a while, okay, baby? You're going to have a fun day with her." Elodie looked up from her coloring book. Her eyes were too knowing for a 7-year-old. She could read the tension in his shoulders, the forced calm in his voice. but she nodded, setting down the crayon. Kieran knelt beside her chair. "Listen to me. This is important. If anything happens, if anyone tries to talk to you or take you somewhere, you scream. You run. You don't stop until you find Aunt Janelle, or another adult you know. Understand?" Her eyes widened. She nodded again, more emphatic this time. "Good girl." He kissed her forehead. "I love you more than anything in this world. Don't ever forget that." She wrapped her small arms around his neck and squeezed. He held her, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo, memorizing the feeling of her heartbeat against his chest. Because if his plan went wrong, this might be the last time. Janelle arrived exactly 20 minutes later, her expression tight with worry. She took one look at the boarded windows and turned to Kieran. "What the hell is happening?" "I can't explain right now. Just trust me. Keep her safe. Don't take her anywhere public. Stay at your apartment. Lock the doors. And if anyone comes asking questions, you don't know where I am." "Kieran, you're scaring me." "Good. You should be scared. But Elodie should be safe as long as she's not here." He handed Janelle a folded piece of paper. "If something happens to me, give this to Darius Monroe. He'll know what to do with it." Janelle's hands trembled as she took the paper. "Nothing's going to happen to you." "Probably not, but just in case." She pulled him into a hug, fierce and quick. Then she took Elodie's hand and led her to the car. Elodie looked back once, her eyes meeting Kieran's through the window. He waved. She waved back. Then they were gone. The house felt empty without her. Hollow. Kieran stood in the driveway, watching until Janelle's car disappeared around the corner. Then he turned and went back inside. Ragnar was waiting in the living room. The dog's attention was fixed on the front window, his body tense. Kieran moved beside him and looked out. The black SUV was back, parked at the end of the street, engine running, visible, deliberate. They weren't hiding anymore. The message was clear. Time's up. Kieran checked his watch. 11:47 a.m. 13 minutes until their deadline. His phone rang. He answered. "Mr. Wallace." The distorted voice. "I assume you're packed and ready to leave." "I'm not going anywhere." A long silence. Then, "That's unfortunate. You had a chance to walk away, to keep your daughter safe, but you chose pride over survival." "I chose justice." The voice laughed, a sound like grinding gears. "Justice? What a quaint concept. Justice is for people with power, Mr. Wallace. You have none. You're just a man with a broken family and a dangerous dog, standing in the way of progress." "Progress? Is that what you call murdering innocent people and stealing their homes?" "I call it business, and business doesn't tolerate obstacles." The voice hardened. "Last chance. Walk out your front door in the next 10 minutes. Get in your truck and drive away. Do that, and I give you my word. Your daughter will be fine." "Your word means nothing. You killed my wife. You threatened my child. You think I'm going to trust anything you say?" "Then you're a fool, and fools die painfully." The line went dead. Kieran set the phone on the coffee table. His hands were steady. His mind was clear. Fear had burned away hours ago, replaced by something colder and more useful. He walked to the closet and pulled out the hunting rifle his father had left him. Remington 700. He'd never fired it, never even loaded it, but he'd kept it cleaned and oiled out of habit. Now he'd loaded it with hands that knew exactly what they were doing, muscle memory from a childhood spent on his grandfather's farm. 5 rounds in the magazine. One in the chamber. He wasn't planning to shoot anyone, but he needed them to believe he might. Ragnar's growl started low, building in intensity. Kieran turned. Through the window he could see movement. The SUV doors were opening. 3 men stepped out, all dressed in dark, tactical gear, all carrying weapons. They weren't trying to hide it, weren't pretending this was anything other than what it was. An execution. Kieran's pulse was a steady drum in his ears. He moved to the kitchen, where he had a clear view of the backyard. Nothing yet. But they'd come from both sides. Standard breach tactics. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Kieran Wallace. I'm at 1247 Oakmont Street. 3 armed men are attempting to break into my home. I need police immediately. Sir, can you describe the men? Tactical gear, weapons. They're not police. They're private security working for Sterling Vance. Send units now. A pause. Sir, I'm showing your address flagged for eviction. Are you refusing to vacate the property? Kieran's stomach dropped. They'd gotten to the emergency services too. Flagged his address. Poisoned the well before he could even call for help. This isn't about eviction. This is attempted murder. Send police now, or I will defend myself with lethal force. Sir, please stay calm. I'm dispatching units to your location, but I need you to put down any weapons and— Kieran hung up. They weren't coming. Or if they were, they'd take their time. Long enough for Vance's crew to finish the job. He was alone. He looked at Ragnar. The dog was vibrating with tension, every muscle coiled tight. His eyes were locked on the front door. Ready, boy? Ragnar's lips curled back, revealing teeth designed for war. The power cut out. Every light in the house died. The refrigerator stopped humming. Total silence except for the sound of Kieran's breathing and Ragnar's low growl. They'd cut the main line, isolating him. No power meant no alarm system, no cameras, no electronic locks. Just him, a dog, and a rifle against 3 trained killers. From the back of the house came the sound of breaking glass. Not the kitchen window this time. The bathroom. Small, high up, hard to climb through, but not impossible. Kieran moved toward the hallway, rifle raised. Ragnar stayed at his side, silent now, all business. From the front came the sound of drilling. They were going through the lock, professional, efficient, no wasted time. Kieran's mind raced. 2 entry points, 3 men. He couldn't cover both. He made a decision. Moved to the hallway, positioned himself at the junction where he could see both the bathroom and the front door. Limited visibility, but maximum coverage. The drilling stopped. A moment of silence. Then the front door crashed open. The reinforced deadbolt ripped from the frame. A man entered, rifle up, sweeping the room. Professional stance. Controlled breathing. Former military, probably. Kieran aimed at the floor in front of him and fired. The shot was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet tore into the hardwood, splintering it. The man dove behind the couch, shouting into a radio. "Contact! He's armed!" From the bathroom came the sound of boots hitting tile. Someone had made it through the window. Kieran spun, bringing the rifle around, but before he could aim, Ragnar was moving. The dog launched himself down the hallway, a black and tan missile. He hit the bathroom door at full speed, slamming it open. A man's shout, cut off by the sound of impact, then screaming, high-pitched and primal. Ragnar had him. The man at the front fired. Bullets punched through the couch, through the drywall, chewing up the living room. Kieran dropped flat, crawling toward the kitchen. Return fire came from behind him. Someone had breached the back door while he was focused on the front. He was flanked. A bullet whined past his head, so close he felt the displacement of air. He rolled, came up firing. His shot went wide, punching through a cabinet. More gunfire. The house was being torn apart. Glass shattered, wood splintered, the air filled with dust and smoke. Kieran scrambled behind the kitchen counter, reloaded. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally breaking through. From the bathroom, the screaming had stopped. Ragnar appeared in the hallway, blood on his muzzle. Not his blood. He moved like liquid death, silent and focused. The man at the back door stepped into view. He saw Ragnar and froze. The dog didn't hesitate. He launched, covering 15 feet in under a second. The man tried to bring his rifle around. Too slow. Ragnar hit him center mass, driving him backward into the wall. The impact cracked drywall. The man's rifle clattered to the floor. The dog's jaws clamped onto the man's forearm, crushing through the tactical sleeve. Bone cracked. The man screamed. Movement from the front. Kieran spun. The first man was advancing, using the furniture for cover, moving tactically. Kieran fired. Missed. The man returned fire. A bullet caught Kieran in the left shoulder, spinning him. Pain exploded through his arm, white-hot and blinding. He dropped the rifle, fell to his knees, blood soaked through his shirt. The man approached, rifle aimed at Kieran's head. "Down! Hands behind your head!" Kieran's vision swam. He pressed his right hand to the wound, trying to stem the bleeding. His left arm hung useless. The man keyed his radio. "Target down! Secure the package!" From the hallway, Ragnar appeared. He'd released the second man, who was curled on the floor, cradling his ruined arm. The dog's eyes locked onto the man standing over Kieran. "Control your dog, or I put him down," the man said, his voice flat. Kieran looked at Ragnar. The dog was trembling, every instinct screaming at him to attack. But he waited for a command. Kieran's mouth was dry. His shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. Blood pooled on the floor beneath him. He thought about Elodie, about her silence, about the way she'd hugged him before leaving, about the promise he'd made to protect her. And he realized he'd failed. Again. "Stand down, Ragnar," he whispered. The dog didn't move. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Maybe the 911 operator had sent someone after all. Maybe Darius had called in reinforcements. Maybe help was coming. But Kieran could see the calculation in the gunman's eyes, hear it in the way he shifted his weight. The man was deciding whether there was time to finish the job or if he needed to abort. The sirens grew louder. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. And Ragnar made his choice. Will the police arrive in time to save Kieran? The sound of shattering glass saved Kieran's life. The gunman's head snapped toward the front window as it exploded inward. Not from a bullet, from a brick wrapped in newspaper that tumbled across the living room floor, scattering shards of glass like diamonds across the hardwood. In that split second of distraction, Ragnar moved. He didn't bark, didn't growl, just launched himself from a standstill, 90 pounds of muscle and fury covering the distance between them faster than the human eye could track. He hit the gunman's arm as the rifle discharged, the shot going wide, punching through the ceiling. The man screamed as Ragnar's jaws clamped down on his wrist. The rifle clattered to the floor. The dog wrenched his head sideways with surgical precision, and something in the man's arm snapped with a sound, like green wood breaking. Kieran scrambled for the dropped rifle, his vision tunneling from blood loss and pain. His left shoulder was on fire, each movement sending lightning bolts of agony down his arm. He grabbed the weapon with his right hand, awkward and off balance, and swung it toward the back of the house where the second man was still down. The sirens were close now, maybe a block away. Red and blue lights strobed through the remaining windows, painting the walls in flashes of color. The gunman Ragnar had taken down was trying to reach for a sidearm, holstered at his hip. The dog released his wrist and went for his throat, not biting, just placing his jaws there, a promise of what would come if the man moved wrong. The message was clear. The man went still. From the back hallway, the third man, the one with the ruined arm, was crawling toward the back door, leaving a trail of blood on the floor. He wasn't a threat anymore, wasn't capable of holding a weapon, much less using one. The fourth man, the one who'd gone through the bathroom window first, wasn't moving at all. Ragnar had hit him so hard his head had bounced off the tile. He was breathing, chest rising and falling, but unconscious. Kieran kept the rifle trained on the front door, waiting for reinforcements that didn't come. After a moment, he realized why. There were only 3 attackers, not 4. He'd miscounted in the chaos. The brick through the window hadn't come from Vance's men. The front door, already broken from the forced entry, swung open wider. A figure stepped through, hands raised, moving slowly. Marcus Webb, the K. Nussen trainer. He was dressed in civilian clothes, a dark jacket and jeans, but he moved with the controlled precision of someone who'd spent years in tactical situations. "Easy, Kieran," Marcus said, his voice calm and level. "I'm here to help." "You threw the brick?" "Diversion. Saw them breach and figured you could use the assist." Marcus's gaze swept the room, cataloguing the damage, the blood, the men on the floor. "Cops are 30 seconds out. You need to put that rifle down before they arrive, or this situation gets complicated." Kieran's hands were shaking. The rifle weighed 1,000 pounds. His shoulder was bleeding through his shirt, dripping onto the floor. But he didn't lower the weapon. "They killed my wife," he said, his voice raw. "Vance sent them to kill me." "I know, and we're going to prove it, but not if you're dead or in jail." Marcus took another step closer, his movements non-threatening. "Rifle down, now, trust me." The sirens reached a crescendo and cut off abruptly. Car doors slammed, voices shouted commands outside. Kieran looked at Ragnar. The dog was still standing over the gunman, jaws positioned at his throat, eyes alert, waiting for direction. "Ragnar, off," Kieran said quietly. The dog backed away immediately, moving to Kieran's side. His muzzle was stained red, but his eyes were clear, focused. Kieran lowered the rifle, set it on the floor, kicked it away. His legs gave out. He sat down, hard, his back against the kitchen counter, blood soaking through his jeans now. The room spun. Marcus was beside him in an instant, pressing something against his shoulder. A towel, pressure to slow the bleeding. "Stay with me," Marcus said. "Medics are coming." The front door burst open. Police flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting. "Hands! Let me see your hands!" Kieran raised his right hand. His left hung useless. "Gunshot wound," he managed. "Shoulder! These men broke into my home." An officer approached, weapon trained on him. Young, nervous, his nameplate read Torres. "Sir, I need you to—" He stopped when he saw the 3 men on the floor, saw the blood, saw the tactical gear and weapons. What the hell happened here? Home invasion, Marcus said, his voice carrying authority. 3 armed assailants breached this residence. Mr. Wallace defended himself and his property. I witnessed the assault and intervened. Torres looked between them, trying to process. Who are you? Marcus Webb, former K-9 tactical instructor. I can provide a full statement, but right now your priority is getting this man medical attention and securing the scene. More officers entered. One of them, an older sergeant with grey at his temples, took one look at the scene and keyed his radio. Control, this is Sergeant Alvarez. We need multiple ambulances at 1247 Oakmont Street. Officer involved shooting. 3 suspects down. 1 civilian injured. Negative on officer involved, Marcus corrected. Civilian self-defense. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. We'll sort that out at the station. Right now, I need everyone's weapons on the ground and hands visible. The gunman Ragnar had released was cuffed first, then the one with the broken arm, who screamed when they tried to move him. The unconscious one in the bathroom was secured where he lay, medics working on him. A paramedic approached Kieran, a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and steady hands. Sir, I'm going to need you to lie back so I can assess your wound. Kieran shook his head. Not until I know my daughter's safe. Sir, call this number. He rattled off Janelle's cell from memory. Ask for Elodie Wallace. Tell her father needs to hear her voice. The paramedic looked at Alvarez. The sergeant nodded. She pulled out her phone and dialed. After 3 rings, Janelle answered. The paramedic put it on speaker. Ma'am, this is EMT Rodriguez with the City Fire Department. I have a Kieran Wallace here who needs to speak with someone named Elodie. Oh my God, is he okay? What happened? Ma'am, is Elodie available? A pause, then Janelle's voice, muffled, calling out. Elodie, baby, come here. Silence, then breathing, small, uncertain. Elodie, Kieran said, his voice cracking. Baby, it's Daddy. Are you okay? No response, but the breathing continued. She was there. She was listening. I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm safe. Everything's going to be fine. I love you so much. A sound, small, fragile. Not words, just a sound. But it was her. Tears burned Kieran's eyes. Stay with Aunt Janelle. I'll come get you soon. I promise. Janelle came back on the line. Kieran, what the hell is going on? I'll explain later. Just keep her inside. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in except me or the police. The police? Kieran, I have to go. I love you both. The paramedic ended the call. Satisfied? Now let me do my job. Kieran nodded and let himself be laid back. The paramedic cut away his shirt, exposing the wound. She cleaned it quickly, efficiently, packing it with gauze. Through and through, missed the bone. You're lucky. Lucky. Kieran almost laughed. His house was destroyed. He'd been shot. 3 men had tried to kill him, but he was lucky. Because Elodie was safe. And he was still breathing. An officer approached with an evidence bag, holding up the brick that had come through the window. The newspaper wrapping had fallen away, revealing something underneath. A flash drive taped to the brick. Marcus caught Kieran's eye, gave the slightest nod. The officer examined it. What's this? Evidence, Marcus said. Related to the assault. You'll want to log that carefully. As the paramedics loaded Kieran onto a stretcher, he saw Alvarez pull one of the wounded gunmen aside. The man was talking, words tumbling out fast and desperate. Alvarez's expression darkened with each sentence. Then Alvarez was striding across the room, his radio already at his mouth. "Control! I need a detective unit to 1247 Oakmont immediately, and get me a warrant for Sterling Vance. Now!" Kieran's vision blurred. Relief and blood loss and exhaustion hit him all at once. He looked for Ragnar and found the dog sitting calmly beside the stretcher, ignoring the chaos around them. The paramedic saw his gaze. "Sorry, sir. We can't allow animals in the ambulance." "He's not an animal," Kieran said, his voice barely a whisper. "His family." Marcus stepped in. "I'll take care of him. Get him cleaned up and fed. He'll be waiting when you get back." Kieran wanted to argue, wanted to keep Ragnar close, but his body had other ideas. The room tilted. Sound became muffled and distant. The last thing he saw before the darkness took him was Ragnar's amber eyes, steady and patient, watching over him like he'd been trained to do, like he'd chosen to do. The paramedics wheeled him out into the morning light. The street was chaos. Police cars, fire trucks, ambulances, neighbors standing on their porches, phones out, filming everything. And at the end of the block, blocked in by police vehicles, was the black SUV. Officers were pulling someone out of the back seat. Sterling Vance, hands cuffed behind his back, his expensive suit rumpled, his face twisted in. Rage! Their eyes met across the distance. Vance's expression promised retribution, promised this wasn't over. But Kieran smiled, a small, tired smile, because for the first time in 2 years he'd fought back, and won. The ambulance doors closed, the siren wailed to life. And as they pulled away from Oakmont Street, Kieran let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, justice was possible after all. What happens when Sterling Vance faces the evidence that could destroy him? The hospital lights were too bright. Kieran woke to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of a heart monitor. His shoulder was wrapped in bandages, immobilized in a sling. An IV drip fed into his right arm. The morphine made everything soft around the edges, muffling the pain, but not eliminating it entirely. A nurse noticed him stirring and came over, checking his vitals. "Welcome back, Mr. Wallace. You've been out for about 6 hours. How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot." She smiled. "The bullet went clean through. No major damage. You'll need physical therapy, but full recovery is expected." She adjusted his IV. "There are some people waiting to see you. Police and a detective. Feel up to talking?" Kieran nodded. She left, and a moment later Sergeant Alvarez entered, followed by a woman in a charcoal pantsuit. She was in her 40s, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that missed nothing. "Mr. Wallace, I'm Detective Carmen Reyes. I've been assigned to your case." She pulled up a chair and sat. "How are you holding up?" "Been better. What's happening with Vance?" Reyes exchanged a glance with Alvarez. "He's in custody, along with the 3 men who attacked your home and Lieutenant James Harding." Kieran's breath caught. "Harding?" "We found evidence linking him to your wife's murder. Financial records, communications, video footage. The flash drive your friend Marcus Webb provided was quite comprehensive." She pulled out a tablet and swiped through images. "We also recovered the weapon used in the attack on your home. Ballistics matched it to an unsolved shooting from 3 years ago. A witness who was prepared to testify against one of Vance's development projects." The pieces fell into place. Vance hadn't just killed Mara. He'd been eliminating anyone who threatened his empire. For years. "How many others?" Kieran asked quietly. "We're still investigating. but preliminary evidence suggests at least 4 murders, 2 suspicious accidents, and multiple cases of witness intimidation. Reyes leaned forward. Mr. Wallace, what you did, providing that evidence, it's going to put a very dangerous man away for the rest of his life. But it's also going to make you a target. Vance has resources, connections, people who owe him favors. I know. We can offer protection for you and your daughter. Witness security protocol until the trial. Kieran thought about Elodie, about the way she'd finally started to feel safe with Ragnar around, about the fragile progress they'd made. Moving her into protective custody would undo all of it, would teach her that the world was dangerous and home was temporary. How long until trial? 6 months, maybe longer. I can't put her through that. She's been through enough. Reyes studied him. Then you need to be smart. Vary your routine. Don't go anywhere alone. Install a security system. And keep that dog close. From what I hear, he's the reason you're still alive. Where is he? With Marcus Webb. He's waiting outside, actually. We needed to make sure you were stable before allowing visitors. I want to see him. And my daughter. Reyes nodded. We'll arrange it. But first, I need your full statement. Everything that happened. Start from when you bought the dog. For the next 2 hours, Kieran talked, told her about the auction, about Vance's threats, about the training files and Marcus's warnings, about the photos of Elodie and the final attack. Reyes recorded everything, asking clarifying questions, building a timeline. When he finished, she sat back. That's one hell of a story, Mr. Wallace. It's the truth. I believe you, and I promise you, we're going to make sure Vance pays for what he did to your family. She left, and a few minutes later, Janelle entered, Elodie clutching her hand. The little girl's eyes were red from crying, but when she saw Kieran, her face lit up. She ran to the bedside, careful not to jostle his injured shoulder. He wrapped his good arm around her, pulling her close. Hey, baby, I'm okay. See, just a little banged up. She buried her face in his chest, her small body shaking with silent sobs. Janelle stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed. You want to tell me what the hell happened? The police said there was a shooting, that men broke into your house. It's over now. Vance is in custody. We're safe. Safe? Kieran, you got shot. I know, and I'm sorry, but I couldn't let him keep hurting people. Couldn't let him get away with what he did to Mara. Janelle's expression softened. She moved to the side of the bed and took his hand. I get it. I do. But you have to promise me. No more playing hero. You have a daughter who needs you alive. I promise. The door opened again, and Marcus entered, Ragnar at his side. The dog's fur was clean, brushed. Someone had put a new collar on him, dark leather, with a metal tag that caught the light. The moment Ragnar saw Kieran, his tail started wagging. He moved to the bedside, pressing his head against Kieran's good hand. Elodie pulled back slightly, looking at the dog. Then, slowly, hesitantly, she reached out and touched his fur. Ragnar turned his head and licked her hand, gentle and careful. She didn't pull away. For the first time since her mother died, she smiled. Marcus cleared his throat. Thought you might want him back. He's been a pain in my ass for the last 6 hours. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't settle. Just sat by the door, waiting. Thank you, Kieran said, for everything. If you hadn't shown up, you'd have figured it out. You're tougher than you look. Marcus pulled up a chair. Detective Reyes filled me in. Vance is going down hard, They found enough evidence to bury him 10 times over. What about his people? The ones still out there? Most of them are scrambling to save themselves, cutting deals, turning on each other. Vance's empire is collapsing. Give it a week and there won't be anything left. Marcus paused. But you should know, there has been chatter. Some of his more loyal guys are talking about revenge. It's just talk, probably. But you need to be careful. Kieran looked at Elodie, at her small hand still resting on Ragnar's head. I will be. That evening, after Janelle and Elodie left, after the nurses had checked on him for the 10th time, Kieran lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed. Text from Darius. Just saw the news. You're all over the local stations. Local father takes down real estate mogul. You're a hero, man. Kieran didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, broken, lucky to be alive. Another text, this one from an unknown number. You made a powerful enemy today. Watch your back. Kieran deleted it. He'd deal with threats tomorrow. Tonight, he just wanted to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying the attack, the sound of gunfire, the smell of blood, the moment when he thought he was going to die. And then Ragnar's intervention. The way the dog had moved with perfect precision, eliminating threats, protecting him without hesitation. The door to his room creaked open. Kieran tensed, his hand reaching for the call button. Marcus stepped inside, Ragnar at his heels. Figured you could use the company. Hospital said they'd make an exception for a service animal. He's not a service animal. He is now. I filed the paperwork this afternoon. Emotional support, PTSD assistance. It's all legit. Marcus gestured to Ragnar. Up. The dog jumped onto the bed carefully, settling beside Kieran without putting weight on his injured shoulder. The warmth of Ragnar's body, the steady rhythm of his breathing, eased the tension in Kieran's chest. Get some rest, Marcus said. I'll be right outside if you need anything. Kieran closed his eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, he slept without nightmares. The next morning, Detective Reyes returned with news. Vance's lawyer tried to get him released on bail. Judge denied it, called him a flight risk and a danger to the community. She pulled up a chair. His assets are being frozen, properties seized. The DA is building a case that's going to put him away for multiple life sentences. What about Harding? Singing like a canary. Gave us names, dates, evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. He's done in law enforcement, and he'll still serve time, but he won't die in prison. Reyes's expression was grim. Justice isn't always perfect, Mr. Wallace, but it's what we have. What about my house? The eviction's been suspended. The lien was obtained fraudulently, so it's void. Your property is yours. She paused. Though you might want to consider moving. That neighborhood's going to be under a microscope for a while. Kieran thought about it, about the house where Mara had died, where Elodie had lost her voice, where he'd almost lost everything. But it was also where Ragnar had saved them, where they'd fought back and won. I'll think about it, he said. 3 days later, Kieran was discharged. Marcus drove him home, Ragnar in the back seat, Elodie squeezed between them. The house looked like a war zone. Broken windows, bullet holes in the walls, bloodstains on the floor. But it was standing, and it was theirs. Marcus helped him inside and spent the afternoon helping board up the remaining broken windows. By evening, the place was secure again. That night, Kieran sat on the couch with Elodie curled against his good side, Ragnar at their feet. They watched a movie, something animated and light, the kind of thing that didn't require thinking. Halfway through, Elodie shifted. Her hand reached for the remote and paused the movie. She looked up at Kieran, her eyes serious. Then she spoke. Her voice was small and rusty from disuse, but it was there. "Daddy?" Kieran's heart stopped. "Yeah, baby?" "Is the bad man gone?" Tears blurred his vision. "Yeah, sweetheart. He's gone. He can't hurt us anymore." She nodded, satisfied. Then she snuggled back against him and unpaused the movie. Kieran held her close, his hand resting on Ragnar's head, feeling the steady rise and fall of the dog's breathing. They'd been broken. All three of them. Rejected, discarded, written off by a world that only valued perfection. But they'd found each other. And together, they'd survived. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be trials, testimony, healing that would take years. But for the first time since Mara died, Kieran believed they could make it. Because broken things, when put together right, could be stronger than they ever were before. What will life look like for Kieran, Elodie, and Ragnar after everything they've survived? The park smelled like fresh-cut grass and autumn leaves. Kieran sat on a bench, his left arm still in a sling, but healing. 6 months had passed since the attack. 6 months of physical therapy, court appearances, and slow, careful rebuilding. The house on Oakmont Street had been sold. Too many ghosts, too many memories painted in blood and fear. They lived in a different neighborhood now, one with sidewalks and streetlights, and neighbors who waved instead of looking away. The house was smaller, older, but it had a backyard big enough for Elodie to play in, and a fence that Ragnar patrolled every morning, like clockwork. Elodie was on the swings, her braids flying as she pumped her legs, going higher and higher. Her laughter carried across the playground, bright and unrestrained. She'd started talking again 3 weeks after the attack, full sentences, questions, stories about school and friends, and things she wanted for her birthday. The therapist said it was remarkable progress. Kieran just called it a miracle. Ragnar lay at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes tracking Elodie's every movement. The dog never fully relaxed in public spaces, always watching, always ready. But the hypervigilance had softened. He could enjoy a sunny afternoon without treating it like a tactical situation. Kieran's phone buzzed. Text from Darius. "Verdict's in. Guilty on all counts." Kieran exhaled slowly. Sterling Vance had been convicted. Murder, conspiracy, racketeering, witness tampering. The jury had deliberated for less than 4 hours. The evidence was overwhelming. 3 life sentences, consecutive. No possibility of parole. He wouldn't die a free man. Another text. Harding got 15 years. Could be out in 10 with good behavior. Kieran's jaw tightened. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough. But it was something. He pocketed the phone and watched his daughter swing, her face tilted toward the sun, free and fearless. Marcus appeared on the path, walking a young German Shepherd puppy on a lead. The puppy was all paws and floppy ears, tripping over its own feet every few steps. "New recruit?" Kieran asked as Marcus sat down beside him. "Yeah, starting a new training program. Ethical, transparent, no corporate sponsors who can bury evidence." Marcus watched the puppy sniff a tree. "Learned my lesson about who to trust." "Good." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Ragnar lifted his head, acknowledging the puppy with a brief glance, before returning his attention to Elodie. "How's she doing?" Marcus asked. "Better. Therapist says she's processing the trauma in a healthy way. Still has nightmares sometimes, but they're getting less frequent." "And you?" Kieran flexed his left shoulder, feeling the pull of healing tissue. "Physical therapy's helping. Should have full range of motion back in another month or two." "That's not what I meant." Kieran knew. The question was about the other kind of healing, the kind that didn't show up on X-rays. "I'm getting there," he said honestly. "Some days are harder than others, but I wake up, and Elodie's safe, and Ragnar's there, and I remember why I fought so hard to stay alive." Marcus nodded. "You did good, man. Took down a monster. Saved a lot of people from ending up like Mara. Doesn't bring her back. No, but it means she didn't die for nothing." Marcus stood, tugging gently on the puppy's lead. "I gotta get this little guy home, but we should grab coffee sometime. Compare notes on dealing with stubborn dogs and broken systems." Kieran smiled. "I'd like that." After Marcus left, Kieran's phone buzzed again. This time it was Detective Reyes. "Mr. Wallace, thought you'd want to know. We closed the last of the cases connected to Vance. Found evidence linking him to 6 murders, not just 4. Families are finally getting answers. It's because of you." "It's because of everyone who helped. Marcus, Darius, you." "Maybe. But you're the one who refused to run when it would have been easier. The one who stood your ground. That takes courage most people don't have." She paused. "How's your daughter?" "She's good, really good." "I'm glad. Take care of yourself, Mr. Wallace. You've earned some peace." The call ended. Kieran looked across the playground and saw Elodie climbing down from the swings. She ran over, her cheeks flushed, eyes bright. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" "Sure, baby. Whatever you want." She threw her arms around his neck, careful of his shoulder, and squeezed. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything." Ragnar stood, shaking off the grass clippings stuck to his coat. He pressed against Kieran's leg, a solid, grounding presence. They walked together toward the ice cream stand at the edge of the park. Elodie held Kieran's good hand, skipping beside him, chattering about her favorite flavors. Ragnar walked on his other side, alert but calm, his amber eyes scanning the area out of habit. People stared as they passed. Some recognized Kieran from the news coverage, the local hero who'd taken down a corrupt developer. Others just saw a man with a little girl and a well-behaved dog enjoying a Sunday afternoon. Kieran didn't care what they saw. He knew the truth. He was just a father who'd gotten lucky, who'd found a rejected dog at an auction and discovered that sometimes the things the world throws away are exactly what you need to survive. The ice cream stand had a line. They waited, Elodie debating between chocolate and strawberry, Ragnar sitting patiently at their feet. A woman in front of them turned around. She was in her 30s with kind eyes and a warm smile. "Is that the dog from the news, the one who saved you?" Kieran nodded. "Yeah, this is Ragnar." "Can I pet him?" "Sure, he's friendly." Kieran looked at Ragnar. "Say hello, boy." The dog stood, tail wagging slowly, and allowed the woman to scratch behind his ears. She laughed. "He's beautiful. You're so lucky to have him." "I know." When they reached the front of the line, Kieran ordered 2 cones, chocolate for Elodie, vanilla for himself. They found a shaded bench and sat, enjoying the simple pleasure of cold sweetness on a warm day. Elodie swung her legs, licking her scone carefully to catch the drips. "Daddy?" "Yeah?" "When I grow up, can I train dogs like Uncle Marcus?" Kieran's throat tightened. "You can be anything you want, baby. Anything at all." She smiled, satisfied, and went back to her ice cream. Kieran looked out across the park. Families playing, kids laughing, dogs running. Normal, safe. Everything he'd fought so hard to give his daughter. His phone buzzed one more time. A text from an unknown number. For a moment his chest tightened, old instincts flaring. But when he opened it, the message was simple. "Thank you for not giving up. My husband was one of Vance's victims. Because of you, we finally have justice. You gave us closure. You're a hero." Kieran deleted the message. He wasn't a hero. Heroes didn't get shot defending their homes. Heroes didn't fail to protect their wives. But maybe, just maybe, he'd done something that mattered. Elodie finished her ice cream and wiped her hands on a napkin. "Can Ragnar have some?" "Dogs can't eat ice cream, sweetheart. It makes them sick." "Oh." She looked disappointed. Then she brightened. "Can we go home and give him a treat instead?" "Absolutely." They walked back to the car, a modest sedan Kieran had bought with money from the sale of the Oakmont house. Ragnar jumped into the back seat, settling in like he'd been doing it his whole life. Elodie buckled herself in, humming a song from school. Kieran started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot. The drive home took 15 minutes. When they arrived, Ragnar immediately began his patrol, checking the perimeter of the yard, while Kieran unlocked the front door. Inside, the house smelled like the lavender candles Janelle had brought over last week. Photos lined the hallway. Elodie at her school play. Kieran and Ragnar at the park. A professional portrait of the three of them, taken last month, Elodie sitting between them, grinning at the camera. And on the mantel, a framed photo of Mara. Smiling, beautiful, frozen in a moment before everything shattered. Kieran paused in front of it. "We did it," he whispered. "We survived, and we're going to be okay." Elodie tugged on his hand. "Daddy, can we watch a movie?" "Sure, baby. Pick one out." She ran to the living room, digging through the DVD collection. Ragnar came inside, his patrol complete, and settled on his bed in the corner. Kieran made popcorn. They curled up on the couch together, Elodie nestled under his good arm, Ragnar at their feet. The movie played, something animated about talking animals and friendship. Halfway through, Elodie looked up at him. "Daddy?" "Yeah? Are we safe now? Forever?" Kieran thought about how to answer. He could lie, could tell her everything was perfect, and nothing bad would ever happen again. But she deserved the truth. "Nothing's forever, sweetheart. But right now, in this moment, we're safe. And I'm going to do everything I can to keep us that way." She considered this, then nodded. "Okay. Okay." As the movie continued, Kieran's mind drifted to the auction 6 months ago, to the moment his eyes had met Ragnar's across the arena, to the decision to spend his last $2,000 on a dog the world had rejected. It had been reckless, desperate, foolish. It had also saved his life. The credits rolled. Elodie was asleep, her head on his chest, breathing slow and even. Kieran carefully extracted himself and carried her to her bedroom, tucking her in. Ragnar followed, positioning himself on the floor beside her bed. "Good boy," Kieran whispered. "Guard her." Ragnar's tail thumped once against the carpet. Kieran returned to the living room and stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street. Streetlights flickered on as dusk settled. A neighbor walked their dog. A teenager rode past on a skateboard. Peace. Normalcy. The things he'd taken for granted before Mara died. He thought about the families Vance had destroyed, the lives he'd shattered, the people who'd never get their loved ones back. Justice had been served. But it didn't erase the pain, didn't undo the damage. All Kieran could do was move forward, raise his daughter, honor his wife's memory, and remember that sometimes the most important battles aren't the ones you choose, but the ones that choose you. His phone buzzed, one final message for the day. This one from a number he didn't recognize, but the words were clear. The world looked at you and saw a failure, looked at that dog and saw a reject, but you both proved them wrong. Thank you for showing us that broken things can heal, that rejected things can save lives, that second chances matter. You're an inspiration. Kieran read it twice. Then he set the phone down and walked to Elodie's room. She was curled on her side, one hand resting on Ragnar's head. The dog's eyes were open, watching over her. Kieran leaned against the doorframe, taking in the scene. His daughter, his dog, his family. They'd been broken, all of them, discarded by circumstances and cruelty. But they'd found each other. And in finding each other, they'd found strength. The world demanded perfection, punished weakness, threw away anything that didn't meet impossible standards. But Kieran had learned something more valuable. That cracks don't make you worthless, that scars tell stories of survival, that the things society rejects often hold the most value, if you're willing to look past the surface. Ragnar had been labeled dangerous, defective, a liability, but he'd been the most loyal, protective, loving presence in their lives. Elodie had been silent, traumatized, broken, but she was healing, growing stronger every day, and Kieran himself had been lost, desperate, on the edge of giving up. But he'd fought and survived, and built something new from the ashes of what he'd lost. He walked to the living room one last time and picked up the framed photo of Mara. I kept my promise, he said softly. I protected her, and I made sure the man who hurt you paid for it. I hope, wherever you are, you can rest now. He set the photo back on the mantel. Then he turned off the lights and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, therapy appointments, work, bills, the everyday struggles of being a single father. But he'd face them, because that's what survivors did. And as he drifted off to sleep, Kieran's last thought was simple. In a world that demanded perfection, never underestimate the power of a broken soul healing another. Thank you for joining us on Kieran, Elodie, and Ragnar's journey. Their story reminds us that everyone deserves a second chance, that the rejected can become the redeemers, and that true strength is found not in perfection, but in resilience. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in the power of second chances, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another story that matters. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us about a time when something or someone rejected by the world became your greatest blessing. Your story might inspire someone else who needs to hear it. Until next time, remember that your value isn't determined by what others discard, but by what you choose to become.